I go back to August, and I look at your best and worst predictions, and we call them out for exactly what they ended up being. For example, this first one was a tough one. This is really tough. This was from Blaze, and he said 2 ACC teams will make the college football playoff. Hashtag book it. Well, hashtag crash and burn fiery death. Like this was a really, really dead on arrival prediction after week 1. Because in week 1, you remember what we had happen, kids? We had Clemson really kind of get put in a locker by Duke. Turnovers everywhere. It was gross. And Florida State, now, they did their part. They beat LSU, but as it turned out, Florida State was going to go undefeated, win the conference, and the committee was going to say, nope, still not enough. This conference was never producing 2 playoff teams. Louisville ended up being the next highest ranked team, and they were 15th. So, I mean, the ACC had the number 5 team and the number 15 team, and NC State was number 18. That was a miss. That was a miss. Next up. This is probably the most painful miss out of the entire batch, at least the ones that I've seen. I mean, Edward from Fairhope, Alabama, he just put it out there. He said Auburn will win at least one of their games against Bama and Georgia. Oh, let's take you back. The Iron Bowl, Auburn leads with 30 seconds to go, and then 4th and 31 happens. And Jalen Milroe to Isaiah Bond, it's like reaching in someone's chest, ripping their heart out, holding it above you, and the blood drips down on your white T-shirt. That was what it was like watching the Iron Bowl. I know, because I watched it in Detroit International Airport. So that's what happened later in the year. Auburn ends up not winning that one somehow. Earlier in the year, remember the Georgia game? Remember when they were tied with Georgia with about 6 minutes left to go in that game? And also lost. They ran for 219 yards on Georgia. They ran for 244 yards on Alabama. And yet, this prediction does not hit. The Jordan-Hare magic. It made the games close, but it did not produce a win. And so, Edward, I hate this. I'm going to whisper the following sentence, but swing and a miss. But that was what bold predictions were all about. That's a good bold prediction. Next up, this is a terrible prediction. Okay, 5th quarter BYU from Gilbert, Arizona. This is just not the way it's done, friend. Penn State loses 5 regular season games and finishes behind Maryland in their division. This had no shot. No shot. They lost both of the big games. Okay, they lost Michigan. They lost to Ohio State. They had one other game that was even close, and that was Indiana. And even if they lost that one, you still would have needed 2 more losses. And they won every other game by double digits. We just had no shot. It's a terrible bold prediction. Terrible. I appreciate the participation, but that was a terrible bold prediction. Now, this next one I thought was a little bit of stretch, and it ended up hitting. So now this is a wrist pop on my part because we got this from Thomas from Jackson, Alabama. Thomas said, Ole Miss will win 10 or more games. Well, you know what? They did. They did. And I put this at a 9.25 on the boldness scale. And Thomas dunked on me. So the preseason over-under win total was 7.5 for Ole Miss. And it was my opinion that they had just won big the year before. And all of a sudden I thought people were like setting the floor way too high for Ole Miss football. And they weren't a top 5 recruiter. Yeah, they had portaled some guys in, but like I didn't think they had the foundation of a roster to just go out there and throw 10 wins on you again. I thought their schedule would be tough. I thought it would be a little bit tougher than it ended up being. But I had doubts, and they silenced them. And they lost to Georgia, and they lost to Alabama. Those were the only 2 losses. And those were the 2 SEC championship game participants. Otherwise, Lane Kiffin, perfect. They got Penn State 2 days from now. I think it's an early game in the Peach Bowl, and that's how they'll wrap up their season. If they beat Penn State and they're an 11-2 team, and they got that portal class coming in, that wide receiver room's nasty. That wide receiver room is going to be disgusting next year. I don't think you've seen hype in a long time like you will see around Ole Miss football. Like I remember, it was the Jevon Sneed year. It's like 05, 07, somewhere like that. There was a ton of hype around Ole Miss. and it didn't end up panning out. But I mean, you don't really see the preseason hype machine around Ole Miss a whole lot, but it's about to be there. It's about to be there big time.